Hi, my name is Kareem Jones, and you are tuned into my channel, Pepe La View, and we are talking about, again, the female group of all time has sold, depending on what article you're reading, anywhere between 20 to 30 million records worldwide, and they also have 6 number 1 R&B hits and 2 pop hits, 2 number 2 pop hits. And we talked about their first CD in the first video, Born to Sing, and the dynamics of that. And now we're going to talk about, yes, I'm telling y'all, I have them. We're going to talk about En Vogue's Funky Divas CD. And we're going to talk about now Dawn Robinson and Maxine Jones. Before we do this, allow me to reiterate. So it looks like Cindy and Terry are lead in En Vogue. When you watched interviews with them, and if you read any of the articles in the early 90s, and when I say early 90s, maybe like 1990, 1991, or maybe even 1992, you will hear, or rather read, that some of the ladies were saying that they kind of leaned on Cindy as far as saying, no, we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do that, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. And the ladies have been quoted as saying that they leaned on Cindy because Cindy had already had, she's dealt with the pageant, she's been a part of pageants as well as done some television shows and some commercials. And so they was like, she's been there, she's done that. And they kind of said they kind of leaned on Cindy to be the backbone. And that's pretty much what I was thinking. Now, the ladies was on tour. Could have been with Freddie Jackson at the time. I know they was on tour with Freddie Jackson and MC Hammer. But the ladies got off tour, whichever one of those tours, which was the last one. And when I recall in interviews when the Funky Divas record was released, they were saying that as soon as they got off tour, they pretty much went back into the studios to record the Funky Divas record. And so what we get with the Funky Divas record, we get to see Dawn and Maxine up front. And it looked like to me that the ladies were pretty much comfortable with that, as far as Dawn and Maxine being up front with the Funky Divas record. Now, allow me to go back and kind of tie all of these things together. So now you have Maxine who said that you might not never get to see lead on anything. And now she's all over the Funky Divas record. She's on Give It Up, Turn It Loose. Is Grammy nominated. She's on My Lovin' You're Never Gonna Get It, co-led. I think that single was Grammy nominated. And she's, of course, leading with the other 3 ladies on Free Your Mind. So she's pretty much center stage with them. She's pretty much neck and neck with them. And you can tell that she can pretty much hold her on if she's allowed to do that. Now, no one is pretty much suspecting that anything is going on in the En Vogue camp. And for the most part, I can just recall if there was anything going on in the En Vogue camp as far as things being leaked out, it would have to be that the ladies were unapproachable. Now, I don't know which one of the ladies we could say was unapproachable. This is all allegedly, but it seemed like most people saying that it was Terry that was the one who was pretty much unapproachable. But did we really care about that? No, we didn't care about it at all because we loved En Vogue and they're so gorgeous, right? And so did we care about them being unapproachable? And I want to bring that up to go back into not competing with En Vogue. I think for the most part, we don't care. We don't care. I really truly think that for whatever reason, En Vogue just works for us. You know, we just love them. It doesn't matter. Even when girl groups came out and surpassed them as far as in record sales, and you pretty much did see En Vogue on the Billboard charts, and other female groups was probably on the Billboard charts like that and racking up awards or whatever on that end of the music industry, it was like we still loved En Vogue. So anyway, so what we have now, and this is how I'm trying to tie everything together. It seemed like Cindy and Terry was put out front first. Then, for whatever reason, Maxine and Dawn was put up, next go around with Funky Divas. Foster and Mcgill Roy saying what they were saying about Maxine, which of course ended up not being the case, her never being sung lead. We know that Dawn, I think, has said recently in some interviews that Foster and Mcgill Roy told them that it probably wasn't wise for them to have the same managers as they had. And I can only speculate that the manager that they're talking about would be David Lombard management, because he's the one who was their manager for the Born to Sing and the Funky Divas record. And for whatever reason, they decided to go with David Lombard. For whatever reason, it seemed like they didn't think too much of anything as far as going back in to record another record. And if you think about it, they probably was really excited about going back in to record another record. At least I know if it was me, I would have been excited. But of course, you have to handle your money, right? You have to take care of your business. And again, I say everything looks great, doesn't it? Now, here's what I want to bring up that I find interesting now, that I, of course, didn't know about at the time. Dawn has been the only one who's been consistent in saying this. Not sure if it's true or not. But Dawn has been quoted as saying that Sylvia Wrong, executive in 1990 of Atlantic Records, and in 1992, she was an executive who moved over to the East West Records. I guess you would call it a subdivision of Atlantic Records. But anyway, Foster and Mcgill Roy pretty much had to stick to their guns when it came to Sylvia Wrong, and with those two records. Dawn has been quoted as saying Sylvia did not like those records. Now, Tommy and Denny, Foster and Mcgill Roy, has also said that Sylvia Wrong, I know for sure, did not like the Funky Divas record. Now, this brings up something very important about how I feel about this dynamic that is taking place within Vogue. It seemed like to me that if we take that under consideration, Tommy and Denny then, for whatever reason, had a lot of say-so with the image of En Vogue and the packaging of En Vogue, the song selection of En Vogue, so on and so forth. And what kind of trips me up is that if Sylvia Wrong did not like the Born to Sing record and the Funky Divas record, they really and truly did put a lot in promoting them. Or did they? Maybe it could have been, you know what? Maybe we need to talk to Tommy and Denny in the ladies about how much money did Sylvia Wrong put into the marketing of En Vogue at the time. And I say that, I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think I recall the ladies saying that it was Tommy and Denny who purchased the black dresses for them in the video of Hold On. I think I recall them saying that. If I'm wrong, please leave a comment and let me know, but I think I recall that happening, them saying that. But it seemed like Tommy and Denny has a good sized grip on the ladies as far as calling the shots. I bring this up to say this. Sylvia Wrong is not necessarily a woman you want to trifle with, okay? And we will talk about that as well. And so the record is all over the place. Funky Divas is selling quicker and more, well, selling faster and selling more copies than than the Born to Sing record. Obviously, I recall my aunt, the same aunt who told me about En Vogue being on Soul Train, called me, and I have listened over the phone to My Lovin' You're Never Gonna Get It. She called me up and she was like, hey, En Vogue has a new single out, and I recall listening to it over the phone. Anyway, long story short on that. So the ladies are all over the place. The ladies are, oh gosh, it's again, they're all over the place. You know, so much so that you see them on, I believe, I can't recall, maybe it's five, anywhere between 5 and 7 appearances on the Arsenio Hall show alone, which we'll talk about that as well. And I don't recall them being on Soul Train. And that's another thing. I don't even recall them being on the Apollo with the Funky Divas record. So I'm saying that to say that whatever is going on with them, they are definitely moving into a different marketplace as far as being, you know, and getting the exposure, the full exposure that they're needing to get in order to be, you know, the mega group that they have become. So that's pretty much it. Maxine and Dawn are up front. We don't necessarily see that there's any problems in the En Vogue camp, right or wrong. Now, I recall, when was it? Well, I'll bring this up real quick. Like I said, y'all, just bear with me because I really don't have a script for this. I didn't think I would need one. But I recall, this is something that I recall that I found kind of strange. And I also want to talk to the ladies about that, or maybe whoever is out there can talk to them about this. There was a lot of movies going on at the time. There was a lot of soundtracks happening at the time. And I would look when a soundtrack would come out, and I would look and see to see if En Vogue would be on the soundtrack. And En Vogue was not on any soundtracks. I think they were on like a cartoon soundtrack or something like that. I think the single is called Someday My Prince Will Come. But for the most part, they weren't like on soundtracks and things like that. It seemed like they was pretty much just doing whatever it was that they were doing, as far as, you know, just being that one unit in selling records and then, you know, promoting them, but they wasn't doing anything extra. I would say that much. So the ladies are having success. I do recall that they were on tour with Arrested Development, and I say this story all the time. My grandmother actually wanted to, she told me, she was like, hey, I hear En Vogue is coming, you know, to coming to my town, and with Arrested Development, and she wanted to purchase me some tickets, but of course that kind of fell through, and I was young at the time, so it really didn't matter to me if I went or not. I was really hoping that I would be able to go, but I think I was probably in the 8th grade when the Funky Divas record came out, so I was kind of excited, but at the same time I was like, well, if it happened, it's happened, if it don't, it don't. Long story short, moving on from that. So they eventually have the single What a Man with Salt and Pepper, which did well for them. And then it seemed like they were about to disappear. Why do I say that? It seemed like they was about to disappear because they released Runaway Love in 1994. Or was it 1993? Now that I want to know. So I am going to actually look that up. I think, shoot, I should have the Runaway Love CD. But okay, so let's see here. 1993 or 1994 is when that record came out. It was released in 1993. Okay, so Runaway Love came out in 1993. And I think this is when I started to kind of think that there was something going on in the En Vogue camp. Two things happened. I recall them being on, I think it was the American Music Awards, and it was Terry and Dawn that showed up. And I was like, okay, where are the other ladies? And when Terry got up to accept a reward, she said that Cindy and Max were at home. I think she either said making them aunts or making them mothers or something like that. So I was like, oh, okay. I was like, wow, they're having babies, right? That was a red flag for me, thinking that there was something wrong, even when they said that. And I do recall when the next day, one of the DJs on this radio station said that the ladies of En Vogue were actually breaking up. And so I was like, okay, I wonder if that's happening or not. Of course, in 1994, there's no release from En Vogue. And I was assuming, well, 1990, Born to Sing, 1992, Funky Divas. So, of course, we're going to get a record out in 1994. And for those of you who really follow En Vogue, then you, of course, you'll know that in 1991, they had released Remix to Sing. And they have a wonderful version of Silent Night on that single, which, by the way, I never thought about it. Max is singing lead on that song. And then for them to say she probably wasn't going to sing lead, I wonder what that's all about. But anyway, Maxine sings lead on the entire song. And then 1992, Funky Divas, and then you have Runaway Love EP in 1993. 1994, there is no record, and I'm going to have to look this up because I want to be sure that I am correct. But I think in 1995, you have Terry Ellis, and she released Southern Gail. I think it's 1995. We're about to find out. I think it's 1995. What do you guys think? 1995. Terry Ellis, personal life. Yeah, so in 1995, Terry Ellis releases Southern Gail. That's when I was like, I'm happy, but something about this isn't right. Now, Terry, if you follow Terry, she's pretty much been very consistent with this one theme throughout the entire career, and it's pretty much, she's always used the term like her bread and butter. She had bills to pay, she has to make her money, so on and so forth. So that's pretty much been Terry Ellis being consistent with that throughout her career with En Vogue. And I do recall her saying when she was releasing performing Wherever You Are on, it could have been like Good Morning America or something like that. I think I recall her saying that, hey, got bills to pay, blah, blah, blah. And in other interviews, I know she had been saying that it wasn't her goal necessarily to outsell En Vogue. And that pretty much was it. I didn't hear too much about it. Now we're about to really get into some good stuff. This is when I'm about to really tackle some issues that we probably will want to tackle, okay, in this group. And I'm saying all of this in order to build up to what I think took place. So let's recap everything very quickly. We have Foster Mcgill Roy, who decides to put the female group together in Vogue. The ladies are, they're doing extremely well. Everything has taken off for everybody. They've captured us, our hearts, our minds, and all of that. We love them. The music industry loves them. There are no other girl group that is pretty much competing with them. However, I think if there was ever a girl group who could have given En Vogue a run for their money, I think it could have been Jade. Jade had a record that they released in 1992 called Jade to the Max. And they're pretty much similar with En Vogue. And if they had the right material and the right image, and what I mean, people probably say, what do you mean the right material? Don't Walk Away was the jam. You are absolutely correct. But for whatever reason, they didn't stick around after their second release, which was, I think, called Mind, Body, and Song. It was called Mind, Body, and Song. I think that record came out in, ooh, don't make me. If they came out in 1992, maybe they released their record in 1994. But anyhow, so that's pretty much what's going on. So we have all of the ladies look like a cohesive unit as far as being out in the forefront, so on and so forth. Now, here's what I think probably started the unraveling of what we know to be the confusion in the En Vogue camp. Only speculations from a fan standpoint, right? Don't have any of the inside track or anything like that. I love all the ladies pretty much equally. I really do. Even though, as I said before, Maxine has really become one of my favorites. And it's more so I'm always cheering the underdog, and I think she's just the underdog in the group. And if anybody has anything to prove, it would be Maxine. And so I'm looking forward to her releasing a new record. I think she's in the process of releasing new music, and hey, I'm looking forward to it. So Terry has released Southern Gail in 1995. And Dawn has said that it was pretty much everybody possibly was going to eventually do a solo record. And I think, this is me, I think this is probably what ended up happening. I don't think that Terry went to the producers or went to Sylvia and said, hey, I want to do a solo record. I think if anything, they went to her and asked her, do you want to do a solo record? I can't recall her saying that in any of the interviews, but this is what I'm speculating happened. Being that Terry is the kind of person that we notice in interviews, that she's always saying, hey, she got bills to pay, money, so on and so forth. I'm thinking she just said, okay, sure, why not? And that was the end of it. I don't think she thought about anything else other than, hey, I'm going to put out my record, and it is what it is. We do know that Cindy in interviews has probably already stated that, you know what, hey, I am, how can I put it? I'm in this group, but this group, maybe it'll do well, maybe it won't do well, but whatever the case may be, I'm just using this as a stepping stone to get to where I want to be as far as being an actress. Well, we do know that in 1992, maybe 1993, Cindy is pregnant. She's married to Glenn. He is a former baseball player. And from my understanding, he's pretty much well off. And I think at this moment in time, too, this is just my opinion, because this is how they come off, you know. I think Cindy is more like, well, I'm married. Everything's great. My husband got money. It is what it is. So what, right? I've never can figure out the vibe with Maxine. I've never been able to figure out her vibe. Because even in interviews, if you watch any interviews with Maxine, you'll see Maxine does not say a lot in interviews. I don't know if that's just her doing, but it seems like she's okay with everybody else doing the talking, and she'll talk every now and then. So I'm not quite sure what that dynamic was like. But what do we do know? We do know that Dawn has said that she was also in the process of releasing her record as well, or at least working on her record. So it's safe to say then Terry and Dawn are working on their records. Terry's record is obviously released first. Now, let's rewind real quick, because we do know one thing. Terry was not going to be in the group simply because they wasn't really looking for 4 members, and also that Terry was not, she didn't show up on time. She shows up, they're kind of, you know, trying to figure out, should we keep her, should we not keep her? And this is what Tommy and Denny has said about Terry as well. Well, Terry and Dawn's voice are pretty much similar, okay? What we know about Dawn. Dawn was lead vocals on Waiting on You for Tommy and Denny's FM2 record. That single is on that record as well as the single is on the Born to Sing record. So we do know that Dawn was singing lead on that song. Which brings up, do we think, is it possible that Dawn possibly could have been the one who was going to be pushed out in the forefront in the group if Terry did not show up for the audition? So I'm thinking what has happened then, if I'm trying to put these things together as a fan, I'm thinking then probably that Dawn was probably even approached about doing a solo record. So now you have the two of them doing working on a solo record. Terry is released first. This is what I think happened. With Sylvia Wrong being the businesswoman who she is. This is what I think happened because Tommy and Denny are pretty much has a good grip on En Vogue because they are signed to Too Tough Enough Productions. This is what I think possibly happened. But let's talk about Sylvia real quick. What do we know about Sylvia? As I said before, she's not a lady to be trifled with. Sylvia is at Atlantic Records in 1990. She moves over to East West Records in 1992. Does really well over there. She brings a lot of acts over to East West Records. Something is happening at Elektra Records around in between 1995 and 1997. I'm not quite sure what's happening over there. It could just very well be like an executive change up over at Elektra Records. But what I do know is that in 1994, 1995, there are a lot of acts on Elektra Records that are being let go. Anita Baker in 1994 released Rhythm of Love. That record had body and soul, and I apologize, does very well for her as it probably was expected to do. And she eventually leaves Elektra Records. Now, Anita Baker has stated that she left Elektra Records because she was having to ask for things that other artists were automatically given. What that meant, I'm not sure. Lisa Fisher, who had been nominated for a Grammy in 1991, or rather 1992 for her 1991 release, How Can I Ease the Pain? She tied with Patti LaBelle in 1991. She was on Elektra Records. She's leaving Elektra Records. Lisa Fisher has said that the record company didn't quite know what to do with her, but that's a whole nother subject and topic altogether. My thing is that if you have Lisa Fisher, who has done really well with How Can I Ease the Pain, and I just like the So Intense album altogether, my thing is record companies don't really think outside the box, and I don't see why when it came to Lisa Fisher that they could simply say, all right, just give us another How Can I Ease the Pain. But anyway, Lisa Fisher is out the door, okay? Then in 1994, you have Angela Winbush, who's over there. And Angela Winbush, she releases her self-titled record with at Elektra Records at 1994, same time around with Anita Baker. And I think she's dropped in 1995. And then you have Shirley Murdoch, who's over at Elektra Records. She eventually leaves. I'm not sure if she's dropped from the record company, but I do know she's no longer there. And she goes over to MC8 Records. Why am I saying all of this? Something is happening within Elektra Records, and a lot of artists are being let go. If you know exactly what happened, please drop. I'm talking about the inside scoop. Go ahead on and drop it. I would like to know. But I'm going back to Sylvia Wrong. If Sylvia Wrong is over at Elektra Records at this time, then I'm thinking Sylvia Wrong has a lot to do with this, allegedly. This is why I say that. If you look at past interviews with Sylvia Wrong, and if you've heard what some artists who have had dealings with Sylvia Wrong have said, she's definitely not a lady, as I said before, to be trifled with. I know Adina Howard has said some things about Sylvia Wrong, and she said as a result, she was no longer at the company. I'm just saying allegedly. Adina Howard has said that, I think she said it has something to do with her liking one of the guys in Boys to Men, and she and Brandy maybe having some back and forth allegedly. I think that that's what she said, but Adina Howard has never said what she said about Sylvia Wrong, other than that it got back to Sylvia. We do know that, who else have had issues with it? Gerald Bevert has said things about Sylvia Wrong. But I think they dated once before. Let me know if that really is true. But he said that eventually it had gotten to the point with him that Sylvia cut his budgets for his records. And I read that in an interview with Gerald, because he made mention that some of the musicians had complained, or asked him rather, about why weren't they being paid what they usually would be paid when they come in and do a session with him. And he said, well, it's because my budget's been cut. So we do know, and this is where I'm going with, I'm going somewhere, and I'm going to cut the video off here because I think we're about to be in the 30-minute point, a 30-minute time frame. I'm thinking what has happened is that Sylvia Wrong, being the businesswoman she is, and Terry has released Southern Gail. That single, Wherever You Are, wonderful single song. I think it's like top 10 on the R&B charts. I think she releases a song called What Did I Do to You, which hovered around the top 40 chart, R&B. And Sylvia, being the businesswoman she is, this is just what I'm saying. Not saying this is true. In my head, I'm saying Sylvia's like, this didn't do well. And since this didn't do well, I'm not going to focus on Dawn's record, because there's a possibility that Dawn's record is not going to do well. And I just don't want to spend any money and any time with this. It just right now makes sense to get these ladies back together and give me another En Vogue record, because I know that that record is going to be a success. And on that note, I'm going to stop here, and we're going to talk about all of that in the next video. Stay tuned.